The story begins with Baek Hee-sung, a man who appears to have everything that anybody in this world could wish for. He is the sweetest husband to his loving wife, Cha Ji-won, and an excellent caring father to their cute little daughter. He earns his living as a potent metal craftsman, thus, their life appears like a fantasy. He is the type of guy whom everybody admires. He is nice, helpful, and always merry. His family's life looks like the dreamt fantasy world. Cha Ji-won is a workaholic detective who has spent most of her life loving her husband with all her heart, and her life with him being the luckiest thing ever for her. She would deeply believe that she is fortunate to have him share a part of her life. To her, Hee-sung is her rock, the one individual making her feel safe and loved by her side. Under the impression that nobody knows Hee-sung better than herself, little does she know he's been carrying a dark secret his whole life. As the episode unfolds, we get to know the fact that Hee-sung is not who he claims to be. Flashbacks reveal the fact that Do-hyun Soo is his actual name. He was the son of one notorious serial killer. For years, he had been living a lie by assuming a new name and identity to keep himself from his former past. He builds up a life without being able to break free from the darkness of his old one fully. As he sits in solitude, things seem to change a bit about him. He loses the warm touch and becomes distant and cold, as if he were far away from being the caring man his family knows. It is as if he is putting up a mask, for example, wearing different clothes with elegance pretending he is the perfect husband and father. The cracks in that mask begin to appear, and you wonder whether this is a case of change or whether the past controls him still. At the same time, Ji-won is at work investigating a new murder case. She has no idea that this homicide case is somehow connected to the hidden past of her husband. While getting into the more detailed aspects of this murder case, she unwittingly gets closer to uncovering the truth about Hee-sung. Each clue brings her closer and closer to finding out who he really is, without realizing the fact that the man she is looking for is the man she has been living with all her life. The ending is on a tight, suspenseful note. Hee-sung's carefully hidden life is slowly starting to unravel, and Ji-won is closer and closer to the truth, though she hasn't realized this yet. You have to think for a long time. How well do we really know those we love? This is only the beginning of an entire suspenseful and emotion-filled story, interlaced with love, trust, and lies. As the mystery unfolds, you cannot wait to see what will happen when Ji-won finally finds out the truth. The tension slowly peaks as Baek Hee-sung's seemingly flawless life becomes more and more difficult to sustain. His wife, Cha Ji-won, is blissfully clueless about the storm boiling under the surface, but Hee-sung's mask of carefully constructed pretense is beginning to crack. As we go deeper into the details of Hee-sung's daily life, it's apparent how much of his darker nature is indeed seeping out. There's a scene where he interacts with his daughter, where, on the outside, he seems to be loving. And it is in the instances where no one is looking when he shows himself to be cold that this depth is found to him. He is calculated, always thinking ahead, making sure no one catches a glimpse of his true self. Yet, sometimes, his emotions seem to disappear altogether, like he's playing a role that he has mastered over the years. Meanwhile, Ji-won is pulled more and more into the new murder case of her life. She is driven by her strong sense of justice, wanting to dig out the killer. She does not know that the case she is investigating relates to her husband's secret past buried under the surface. Danger to her family quietly increases as every clue she came across, but she was totally unaware of the overhanging danger on her head. The episode also hints into his past, with flashes that introduce his troubled childhood, the infamous crimes his father committed, and how all these happened. It shows the reasons why Do-hyun Soo had to transform and live in disguise. The complexity of Hee-sung unfolds, raising a question in your mind. Was he molded by those crimes? Or is he fighting not to become one? One of the most intense scenes with Hee-sung occurs when some old acquaintance recognizes him as Do-hyun Soo. Panic crosses his face, but after a moment, he returns to his freezing, composed self. Using chilling precision, he deals with the situation, indicating a willingness to do whatever it takes to keep this secret safe. This tells something about how far Hee-sung is willing to go to bury his dark past. But as she is getting closer to solving the case, Ji-won unknowingly also gets closer to finding her husband. It's as if the audience is running along the edge with Ji-won, knowing that if she digs just a little deeper, the truth will explode into their lives. The tension arises as it's difficult now to separate Hee-sung's two lives, the decent family man and the ghost of the man he once was. Walls are closing in on him. It won't be long before the secret world of the former clashes with Ji-won's idea of reality. This episode deepens the suspense much further, with secrets unraveling at each turn. Love and trust are placed under test. The stakes are high, and you will be questioning, how much longer can Hee-sung maintain this charade, and what happens when Ji-won discovers the truth? The only thing that tightens later in the episode with regard to the main character, Baek Hee-sung, is his noose. His carefully spun secret double life crashes around him, forming an oppressive weight on the walls closing in on him. Even though Cha Ji-won, his wife, continues to believe that she is living with a loving and devoted husband, the calm, controlled world of Hee-sung slowly starts to spin out of control. The murder case she is working on finally gives her closure with each new clue. The more she investigates, the stronger her resolve to catch a killer grows. She listens to her instincts sharp as ever. She gathers hints of things that aren't quite right, a look, a tone in Hee-sung's voice, but deep down, she can't quite shake off that feeling. She pushes the thoughts aside, telling herself it is merely work stress. Meanwhile, Do Hyun-soo's old identity starts haunting Hee-sung. More flashbacks are introduced into his life. We see the relationship with his father and the aftermath trauma of the brutal murders that happened, related to his family as well. The weight of his dark past haunts him all the time, and it is visible that he never came out of it, even when he's out of it physically. Among the most boiling moments is when Hee-sung runs into a journalist trying to find every single dirt on his past. The journalist began putting together exactly who Hee-sung is and becomes a very dangerous threat for him. Hee-sung's fear is transparent, but it's very much kept under wraps because he tries hard to regain composure, hiding the panic beneath. He knows that everything he's worked to protect, perfect life, family, everything, will be destroyed if this reporter digs further. Hee-sung takes matters into his own hands, and you could tell what measures he's willing to take to protect his secret. There is a chilling moment when Hee-sung totally allows the cold, calculating side of his nature to control him. His actions, subtle as they are ruthless. As if the real Do Hyun-soo, defined by his father's crimes, momentarily emerges once more, you are left with the question of just how much of that dark past he really left behind. It is a shallow meet between Hee-sung and Ji-won, while she is inculcating herself into the case, and it serves as a truce moment. Something is not right, but she does not know what it is. Her love for him starts to make her feel too much about him rather than what he is as such, making things easy and closing her eyes to the obvious. She always needs to believe in the man she was married to, but her sense of being a detective marks a loud signal that something is wrong. It ends with a nerve-wracking cliffhanger when Ji-won discovers the critical piece of evidence for her that connects directly to Hee-sung's past. She has yet to realize how big a jolt this is going to be. However, while Hee-sung is at the crossroads, he knows Ji-won isn't very far from the truth. He can sense the approach of the day of reckoning. This would be a shaper of his family's destiny and his own life. Episode 3 puts you on the edge of your seat because of the noose that tightens around Hee-sung's secret. Suspense is unbearable, wondering how long he could maintain the facade and what awaits when Ji-won finally discovers the man she loves is not what he seems. The stakes are much greater than before, and everything small seems to be a step too close, hung between love, trust, and utter betrayal. Baek Hee-sung's otherwise perfectly constructed world seems to have been brought close to a point where you can sense the pressure really mounting onto him. The walls are slowly closing in, and the man who seemed so in control earlier can barely hold things together. In the episode, Hee-sung opens carrying out his usual activities in the house, playing the role of the devoted husband and loving father. His wife, Cha Ji-won, and their daughter have seen one cool, composed Hee-sung. But behind his pleasant smile, you can see the rife growing fear he has. He knows the danger is closing in on him. Ji-won is still caught deep in the well of investigations for murder, and she can't shake that feeling that something is not right. She's sharp, as always, and her instincts are firing up, but she is blind to the truth that the man she loves hides some terrible secret. As Ji-won digs deeper into her case, she unearths a crucial piece of evidence that leads her to Do Hyun-soo, the man her husband really is. At least, she does not know this yet. She pursues the chain of clues, oblivious to the fact that her investigation is coming closer to her own door. It is a tragic irony, seeing Ji-won nearing the truth without realizing how shattering it would be for her once the puzzle is complete. Hee-sung starts to fall apart here. He is more nervous, more desperate, knowing that at any moment he has a chance of losing Do Hyun-soo's true identity. There is this chilling scene when Hee-sung bumps into someone from his past, and they recognize him. The tension is unbearable. You could see panic in his eyes. But Hee-sung is a master of control, and in a split second, he's back into survival mode. Terrifyingly, he puts on this mask of concealing his fear and gives the situation a twist. You then get to see just how far one would go to protect their little secret, even going against moral boundaries. Meanwhile, the emotional distance begins to spread between Hee-sung and Ji-won. There is that one moment when Ji-won confronts Hee-sung as to why he was acting so weird, asking him if something was wrong. Hee-sung, being an actor, is able to assure Ji-won of everything being all right. It's just noticeable that their relationship becomes strained because of this lie. Ji-won wants to believe him, wants to trust him, but her instincts feel otherwise. The most emotional scene comes when Ji-won discovers something huge about her case, something that directly connects Do Hyun-soo with the murders she's been investigating. One step closer to realizing that the man she's been looking for is the man she's lived with all this time. It's a heart-thumping moment because the audience knows what it's going to find, but she doesn't. You can sense her bewilderment, and the doubt starts to creep in, but she hasn't yet attained the level of making the connection. As the climax approaches, Hee-sung is even more keyed up than before. He maintains his perfect mask of Baek Hee-sung, but starts leaking nervousness through holes in his mask. As he draws closer to the revelation of his secrets, Ji-won can hardly stand to wait, and makes you impatient for what will happen next. Detective Cha Ji-won has always been sure about her world, her job, family, and above all, her husband, Baek Hee-sung. However, now, something doesn't feel right. It begins with growing, spreading doubt that she cannot put her finger on. As she was working with the new case, Ji-won found a small little clue she didn't expect to connect with Hee-sung, but somehow the detail stuck in her head. She tried to shake it off by herself, but the feeling only strengthened. Slowly, Ji-won started to question her past life with Hee-sung, and things she never wondered about now felt strange. Times when he retreated on other issues, when she looked distant or cold for no apparent reason. She can now remember the moments, but as she calls it, her head starts to spin with an uneasiness. For his part, Hee-sung felt that Ji-won changed in some way. He was aware of the way she began to look at him now, the way she became cautious with him. It scares him. He knows that if Ji-won digs deeper, his secret, his real identity as Do Hyun-soo, son of a serial killer whose deeds are notorious, will be laid bare. He has worked so hard to keep the past buried, and he is willing to do just about anything to keep this life he has constructed with her, Ji-won, and their little daughter safe. But no matter how hard Hee-sung tries to seem normal, the tension between them continues to escalate. Ji-won, sharp-witted, begins to doubt every moment she glimpses of the carefully hidden fear within him. She wants to believe that she is imagining it all. Hee-sung is her husband, the man she loves and trusts. But as a detective, she cannot afford to miss all the signs. She had always trusted her instincts thus far, and they are telling her that something's not right. She soon realizes that the separation of her professional and personal life was not going to be as easy as she had said. Her cases usually made her mind sight any distracting, but now every moment was perpetrated by the memories of Hee-sung. Her work suffers and things are worse back at home. The happy, easygoing conversations between her and Hee-sung are replaced with long silences and awkward pauses. She looks at him more closely now, but now these cracks can be seen piercing through his mask. Every time Ji-won opens her questioning eyes and looks at him with great curiosity, she thinks the walls are closing in. The finale of the episode is when Ji-won stands at the precipice of a hard decision. She is more than ever closer to finding out about the truth about her husband, but at the same time she is part of the hard, unwilling reality that does not believe it. She is torn between love for Hee-sung and duty as a detective. And you are left as a viewer who keeps asking oneself, how long will Hee-sung live this lie? And after Ji-won finally discovers the truth, could their lives ever be even remotely the same? Suspense builds up the entire episode, and you can feel it all over and precisely just as Ji-won does. It's no longer a case, but love, trust, and betrayal. The last scene of the episode shows Ji-won closer to unmasking Hee-sung, making one feel an important cliffhanger viewers would want to see come what may. This episode is exciting with mystery together with emotional struggle. In this episode of Flower of Evil, the tension keeps building, as Detective Cha Ji-won inches closer to discovering the truth about her husband, Baek Hee-sung. Well, she cannot ignore this nagging feeling that something's not right about him. She is now more than ever determined to figure out who he really is. Every new piece of information she uncovers, and she's left questioning everything about their relationship. Despite this growing sense of betrayal, Ji-won is torn by the lingering love she still feels for him and their daughter, making her internal struggle all the more painful. On the other hand, Hee-sung begins to sense that Ji-won's resolve is stronger than he anticipated, and panic sets in. He knows that if she uncovers the darkest parts of his past, it will destroy their family. Desperate to protect what they have, Hee-sung wants to prove to Ji-won how much she means to him and how much he cherishes their family. Yet a heavy cloud of doubt hangs over him, as he can't shake the feeling that it may already be too late. The tension between them reaches new heights when Ji-won confronts Hee-sung again, this time in an even more emotionally charged confrontation, finally lets her emotions spill out. Hee-sung, however, remains defensive, still holding back crucial parts of the truth. Both of them can feel the weight of the secrets, the distance growing between them, and the memories of their once happy relationship looming over the conversation. In a poignant moment, Ji-won recalls the love they used to share, which deepens the emotional stakes. Hee-sung, feeling the full weight of what he stands to lose, experiences a flood of sadness and remorse. The episode highlights the desperate struggle between love, fear, and distrust that both characters are enduring, creating a tense atmosphere where they are both fighting against their emotions as much as each other. The episode ends on a dramatic note, with Ji-won receiving a mysterious phone call. The call seems to promise that more of Hee-sung's past will be revealed, leaving Ji-won looking both shocked and devastated. The viewers are left on edge, wondering what new revelations will come to light and how it will affect their already fragile lives. This cliffhanger sets the stage for even more turmoil and heartbreak in the episodes to come. Overall, the 7th episode holds a lot of depth in terms of emotions and focuses on much love versus betrayal. It keeps the audience hooked onto the journey that Ji-won and Hee-sung go through as they try to overcome the shadows left in their past. The plot builds up as investigating officer Cha Ji-won reaches her crossroads in her investigation into her husband, Baek Hee-sung. The episode begins with a dazed Ji-won, who is still reeling from the shocking call she just received from the last episode before this, filling in behind secrets in the past of Hee-sung that could possibly break their family. Taking that as a challenge, Ji-won accepts the challenge with a fresh determination to find out the truth. She approaches an old acquaintance of hers who knows everything about Hee-sung's past. This acquaintance reveals some pretty disturbing details that only deepen Ji-won's fears about who Hee-sung really is. Each reveals something more that makes her question their whole life together. At the same time, Hee-sung desperately tries to hold his family together. He is aware that Ji-won is starting to lose trust in him, and that walls are too close up on him as well. He strives hard to be supportive and loving, but this burden of secrets never really leaves him. His soul, at this point, has lost all hopes as truth outshines sooner than what he could have anticipated. This new information causes some tension within their home. They sit down for a very crucial talk when Ji-won has her feelings open. She is also confused and hurt and asks how a great person, whom she loves, could have such a dark past. Hee-sung was hesitant to say the right thing, with his desire to protect his family and his time to reveal that which might develop chaos into their family. In this emotional discussion, and explained how he tried to run away from all that had been and created a new life with Ji-won and their daughter. Ji-won listened as she gazed at the man she was in love with, fighting his battles with demons and feeling hurt by the secrecy. As they talk, hope flickers in again. What will heal them is an understanding of Hee-sung's past. At the same time, she knows she needs to make her decision. The episode finally rises to a climax as Ji-won decides whether to stand with Hee-sung or try and force the truth into their faces. The episode ends with a cliffhanger, this time as Ji-won gets another call from a person who threatens to expose Hee-sung's secrets should Ji-won continue with his menace. Hee-sung could almost see the mix of fear and determination mirrored on Ji-won's face as she spoke. It leaves viewers anxious for how she will deal with it. The depth of emotions in the 8th episode is premised on trust, love, and the fight against this miserable past, while keeping a viewer holding his or her breath for Ji-won and Hee-sung, since they are up against some battles together. In this very dramatic episode of Flower of Evil, the pressure mounted upon Detective Cha Ji-won to confront reality about her husband, Baek Hee-sung, becomes too much to handle. The weight of his dark past is above her, and every moment in the episode was developed with this kind of intensified momentum. The danger waged against the family is also escalating her determination to protect those she loves. The first thing Ji-won does is know there's something amiss. She was well aware the man she thought she knew so well had a lot to hide, but instead of shutting down, she throws herself deeper into her investigation, determined to know everything that was there about Hee-sung's past. She starts meeting with people who knew him before, that is to say, those with whom he shared his life before becoming Baek Hee-sung. This tense and emotional episode has the detective Cha Ji-won finally learn the truth that her husband, Baek Hee-sung, had been deceiving her about his past. The episode begins immediately after a threatening visit Ji-won had earlier. She is well aware that she needs to take immediate action in order to protect her family, but at the same time, her allegiance to Hee-sung makes everything complicated. Knowing how desperate Hee-sung is to keep these dark secrets hidden, she turns out to be determined to seek out the truth. Off, Ji-won goes to confront a mysterious figure who had threatened her at the last meeting. Their meeting was intense. What she learned broke her even further. He told her shocking details concerning the dark past of Hee-sung that she feared the most. She, who always believed in her husband, begins to question every piece of understanding she had with him. He can feel that Ji-won is drifting away from him, and he also knows she's close to the truth. Desperate, he realizes it is high time to confess everything. Maybe honesty is the way in which he will save their love. He sets himself up mentally knowing that the conversation would hurt them, maybe even change their relationship once and for all. Back home, Hee-sung waits anxiously for Ji-won to return. when she does, he finally gathers his courage to open up. Their moment is replete with raw emotion as he starts to tell secrets he has hidden for so long. The chain of events that shaped his past, the remorse he feels, and the choices which led him to this place. Ji-won listens, her heart torn asunder between love and betrayal. As Hee-sung opens himself up, Ji-won feels all the mixed emotions. She understands why he kept his past to himself, but the weight of it can only make her not fully forgive him. They let their fears out, him of losing the life they had built with her, and Ji-won of what this means to their family. The most dramatic scene in the episode includes when Ji-won gives up and breaks down in tears as he cannot bear the weight of the truth. Hee-sung consoles her by vowing to do everything humanly possible to care for the family from now on. This is their moment of weakness, and the dark shadow of the past. With the tension between husband and wife, Ji-won discovers critical proof, a file which would reveal the truth of Hee-sung's previous life to the world, hence leading to probable trouble for him since he could be caught. Now, Ji-won is confronted with an impossible dilemma. Should she help her husband cover up his secret by sacrificing her family status and protect them? Full of confusion over what she should do next. With the truth finally out, viewers are left wondering how Ji-won will tread upon the difficult road ahead of her, and whether the family will survive Hee-sung's past. In short, Episode 10 is a thrilling narration of love, truth, and aftermath caused by the past. The emotional depth and intensive moments make the audience remain grasping till Ji-won and Hee-sung are able to face their problems together. Detective Cha Ji-won faces the burden of Baek Hee-sung's past and the repercussions it might bring. The episode is set with Ji-won standing in her living room, clenching tightly in her hands the file containing the evidence about Hee-sung's history. She is torn with love for him and a duty as a detective. Meanwhile, as the story continues to unfold, Ji-won seeks advice from a friend and colleague to warn her against taking such a reckless measure. Now, she comes to the conclusion that she needs to think in accordance with her own value system, doing what is right, but also keeping her family safe. Consciously, she now needs to strike a tight balancing act between her personal and professional lives. Meanwhile, Hee-sung realizes that Ji-won really needs him and tries to be supportive of her sentiment. He tries to show her the man he is now, trying to prove that he has changed and is committed to being a good husband and father. He takes his daughter on a special outing, trying to create happy moments in the middle of such a chaotic life. The risk that Ji-won took in pursuing her investigations is still very strong. She begins to dig into the incidents that led Hee-sung to take certain decisions in the past, trying to rationalize them. Every revelation gets her closer to understanding, but it complicates her feelings more. Ji-won starts realizing that if one cannot forget the past easily, then one's wounds will definitely heal gradually as well. This is when Ji-won decides to confront Hee-sung about the file she dug up. She wanted him to open his heart fully to her. And so Ji-won, visibly shaken, agreed to share everything with him, as if this was the moment that would strengthen their bond or break them apart completely. As Hee-sung shares these painful memories from his past, Ji-won pays close attention. He regrets and comes to terms with choices he made that led him astray, but at the same time, points out how things have changed. In this moment, the both are extremely raw and emotional, vulnerable in every possible way. A phone rings. It is the stalker who threatened her earlier. He had made a veiled threat to back down from her investigation on Hee-sung when a more threatening threat arises for her safety. Ji-won is standing at the crossroads once again, her heart aching with the weight of knowing Hee-sung's past. Pursue the truth or find a way to do both. Love and the ambiguity of dealings with the past. The richness in emotions and development of the characters make people yearn to know how Ji-won and Hee-sung will figure out their intertwined destiny. The coming to light of secret truths that threaten to disrupt the delicate balance of love and trust in Baek Hee-sung's life. The episode opens with a haunting flashback and further into his psyche. the audience is relentlessly reminded of the internal conflict that defines him. Detective Cha Ji-won, devoted wife of Hee-sung, finds herself knee-deep in an intense investigation over a string of brutal murders. And the more she digs through the evidence and peels away layers of mystery, she unlocks the appalling realization that the clues remind her far too much of her husband. Torn between her love for Hee-sung and justice. The director captures this by taking close-up shots of the worried expressions of Ji-won and the mounting evidence being presented. Ji-won's questioning boomerangs into revealing inconsistencies in her husband's past. Once a haven, has become a battlefield where love is fighting out suspicion. And every one of their interactions is full of tension and underlined by the haunting score that drives in the emotional stakes, as the mystery. Flashbacks paint darker lines about Hee-sung's early life, through moments that led him further down this perilous path. The sequences interweave the present-day investigation, wringing out tension and emphasizing the stakes involved. The audience can empathize with also fight ghostly encounters from his past. As the conversation turns, Ji-won's voice broke into emotion as she confronted him directly. "What are you hiding from me?" she asked, her eyes searching for truths. The progression further accelerates with shots of colleagues working tirelessly to break down the case, eventually amplifying the urgency. Ji-won must have to make the final decision between two options. Expose evidence about Hee-sung through visual storytelling, her voice cracking but still firm. "This connects everything, doesn't it?" She charges against him, trying to catch a glimpse of truth in him through those eyes. Electricity charges in the air as Hee-sung's mask begins to break down, where those cracks in the armor are visible. "You have to believe me. I'm not who you think I am," he pleads, and despair tinged with terror sets in. It all comes down to a heart-stopping decision, whether to believe one's instincts or trust one's heart. The screen fades into darkness as Episode 13 was full of suspense, emotional conflict, and the frightening experience of uncertainty. And one did not know whether to sit back and relax or hold their breath in expectation of the next revelation in this fantastic drama. Starting with a recap of the previous cliffhanger involving Detective Cha Ji-won standing before her husband Baek Hee-sung, the episode finds enough incriminating evidence against him related to the murders. High levels of anticipation hang over the plot as emotional stakes have been raised. Ji-won is torn between her love for Hee-sung and her adherence to justice, which she hesitantly finds herself in. She stays strong, demanding clarification. "How could you keep this from me?" she questions him, her voice quivering with anguish and betrayal. The torment in her eyes is even captured by the camera as it underlines the gravity of inner turmoil this position causes her. Hee-sung turns to her, pleading for her to understand so he can continue to protect his family and life as it is. "I did it to keep you safe," he insists, revealing the depth of his internal struggle. Flashbacks intercut with the present to show moments from Hee-sung's past, contextualizing his actions. Glimpses of what he must have gone through and endured reveal more about his character and evoke sympathy despite his misdeeds. Because as the story would unfold, people started understanding why he felt the need to cover up his past. Now, the probe goes on, and Ji-won meets up with her team to collect all the evidence they have. The department starts to get heavy as people tend to think Hee-sung is involved. Her colleagues pull her back and tell her to keep out of it. However, Ji-won has a reason for her emotional attachment. The office dynamics change, and the professional conflict with her personal life comes up. And then it goes one step further, undercurrents, and a seeming pattern of murder ties up with an old child friend of Hee-sung's, drawing Ji-won further and further into the twisted track of deception and vengeance. The pace goes faster, as Ji-won desperately searches for clues within ever-tightening deadlines, which will make it a veritable stream of fervent and tension-filled scenes sure to latch the audience onto their seats. Now, as Ji-won appears to square off with Hee-sung once more, this time with the new evidence about the murders connected to his past, she can now scream at him as if saying, "You're not the man I thought I knew." The burden of those words hangs in the air thickly as Hee-sung deals with guilt, and the loss of everything they have. Their confrontation crescendos into almost heartbreaking exchange, filled with raw emotion and honest confession. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Hee-sung finally opens parts of his past that he kept hidden, explaining how he came to be in some of these situations, why he chose to get away from his life. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said, his voice full of tears. This moment of truth makes Ji-won reevaluate everything she has been thinking and break down the tension in coming to terms with why she loves him despite the actions he puts out. The episode thus climaxes thrillingly as the murderer suddenly, dramatically makes an audacious move by turning his attack on Ji-won directly. Such a shocking turn of events made the story go further into unknown territories. This shifts the stakes to become highly personal. The threat to Ji-won's life becomes more intense. Suspense loomed in quick cuts between frantic Ji-won searching for answers and closing danger around her. As the serial approaches its last episode, Ji-won finds herself at the crossroads of her life. She has to choose between her duty as a detective and Hee-sung of her dark journey of turmoil into the unknown as she moves through dark alleys. Back in the precinct, the clue of Hee-sung sets off a storm of commotion as Ji-won's colleagues try to decipher the recent events that occurred. Snippets of mistrust spin around Hee-sung and how this was now highly risky on Ji-won as she tries to protect her family while in search for truth. The camera pans out to capture the stern expression while fighting out the war within herself as she tries to navigate the two. Her love for Hee-sung and her profession as a detective. As the investigation heats up, Ji-won is given some sort of anonymous tip that leads her to a hidden location connected with a serial killer. A tense montage then starts as she prepares for confronting the truth, of fear and resolve mixed together. Rapidly pacing with cuts between Ji-won's preparation and shots at the sinister plans of the killer, it further builds anticipation and suspense. There, finally, where everybody would think she was headed, that shocking revelation. The killer is someone Ji-won knows from her past, the person she would never, under a million suns, have suspected. The more melodrama this pours into the narrative, the deeper the emotional point of the story. Ji-won, recalling that hurt of betrayal. "Why are you doing this?" she asks, voice steady despite the whirlpool of emotion. The killer's answer unfolds a web of revenge and jealousy, taking Ji-won deeper and deeper into the personal, face-to-face conflict and testing the limits. Meanwhile, with the realization that the killer might head toward Ji-won, a desperate Hee-sung sets out to find out the truth behind the killer's identity. The film cuts into flashbacks, which depict how Hee-sung had first known about the deathly murders, which reflects on the choices he had made and led him up to this crucial time. Having seen his determination, racing against time against the haunting score with underscored urgency of time, the audience finds the entire scenario tenfold more thrilling. Ji-won finally faces off with the killer in a dramatic confrontation. There's so much emotional intensity in their conversation, taunting Ji-won about Hee-sung's past. "He'll never be free of who he really is," the killer sneers, and off goes Ji-won into a whirlwind of turmoil. Those words land deep enough to turn inside out everything she thought she knew about her husband. Just when it seems like Ji-won will get out alive, the whole situation goes out of hand. The killer reveals a plan that is not only chilling, but will add a threat to Ji-won's life, and Hee-sung's too, setting the action in for the heart-stopping climax.